Have you ever watched someone risk everything, just to defend a total stranger? What if that one moment of courage didn't just save a man, it turned a quiet town upside down and changed lives forever? Stay until the end, because the twist will leave you speechless. In the small town of Maple Ridge, at a little diner called the Corner Spot, a young waitress named Sarah Jennings did exactly that. It was a regular Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the air smelled of coffee and fried onions, and the jukebox played old country tunes. Sarah, 28, moved between tables in her white shirt, red waistcoat, and black pants, her hair half up in a claw clip, a faint smile on her face despite the long hours. She was the kind of person who remembered your order before you even sat down, always ready with a warm word or a quick laugh. But that day, something shifted in her, something that would change her life and the whole town. The Corner Spot was busy with locals chatting over plates of burgers and pie. Sarah balanced a tray of sodas, weaving through the crowded tables, her eyes scanning for empty glasses or raised hands. At a booth near the window, a man sat alone. He was quiet, almost too still, with a worn jacket and a cap pulled low over his face. He nursed a cup of black coffee, his hands wrapped around it like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. Sarah had noticed him before. He came in every few quiet days, always alone, always polite, but he never said much. She figured he was just passing through Maple Ridge, maybe a drifter with a story he wasn't ready to share. As she refilled a pitcher of iced tea behind the counter, the diner's glass door swung open with a jingle. 2 police officers walked in, their boots heavy on the checkered floor. Officer Daniels, a stocky man with a loud voice, led the way, his partner, Officer Grant, trailing behind with a smirk. The room quieted for a moment, forks pausing midair as the officers scanned the place. Sarah felt a prickle on the back of her neck. Something about their posture, too stiff, too purposeful, set her on edge. Daniel's eyes landed on the man in the booth. He nudged Grant and they moved toward him, their hands resting on their belts. Sarah watched from the counter, drying her hands on a rag. The man didn't look up, just kept staring into his coffee. Daniels leaned over the table, his voice loud enough to carry. "Hey buddy, you got some ID on you?" The man's shoulders tensed, but he didn't respond. Grant chimed in, his tone sharp. "We're talking to you. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The diner grew quieter, heads turning. Sarah's heart picked up speed. She didn't know the man, but she knew Daniels and Grant. They had a reputation in Maple Ridge for throwing their weight around, especially with folks who didn't talk back. She'd seen them hassle kids outside the gas station or lean on shop owners for no good reason. But this felt different, like they were looking for trouble. The man finally spoke, his voice low, almost a whisper. "I'm just having coffee, not causing any problems." Daniels laughed, a short mean sound. "Not causing problems? You look like trouble to me. Let's see that ID or we're taking a walk." He stepped closer, looming over the booth. The man's hands tightened around his mug, but he didn't move. Sarah's grip on the rag tightened too. She glanced at her boss, Mike, who was wiping down the grill in the back. He caught her eye and shook his head slightly, a warning to stay out of it. But something in her wouldn't let her stand still. She'd grown up in Maple Ridge, seen too many people pushed around because they didn't have the power to push back. Her mom, sick and struggling with medical bills, depended on Sarah's tips. Her little brother, barely 15, looked up to her. She couldn't just watch this happen. She set the rag down and walked over, her sneakers soft on the floor. "Officers," she said, keeping her voice steady. "He's just a customer. Paid for his coffee, same as everyone else." Daniels turned, his eyes narrowing. "Stay out of this, Sarah. This doesn't concern you." But Sarah didn't back down. She stepped closer, her hands on her hips. "It concerns me when you're harassing someone in my diner for no reason. He's not doing anything wrong." The room felt electric now, every eye on her. Grant snorted, folding his arms. "Your diner? Last I checked, you just pour coffee here. Go back to your job, sweetheart." The words stung, but Sarah held her ground. She looked at the man, who finally raised his eyes to meet hers. They were tired, deep-set, like he'd seen too much. But there was something else there too, gratitude maybe, or hope. "I'm not going anywhere," Sarah said, her voice louder now, carrying across the diner. "If you've got a real reason to bother him, say it. Otherwise, let him drink his coffee in peace." A murmur rippled through the crowd. A few locals nodded, others whispered. Daniel's face reddened, his jaw tight. "You're making a big mistake, Jennings," he said, stepping toward her. "You don't want to be on the wrong side of this." Sarah's heart pounded, but she didn't flinch. She thought of her mom fighting to get better and her brother who needed her to be strong. "I'm not the one making a mistake," she said, her voice clear. "You're the ones picking on someone who's done nothing to you. That's not what Maple Ridge is about." The man in the booth shifted, pulling his cap lower. "It's okay," he said softly, like he was trying to calm things down. "I'll go." But Sarah shook her head. "No, you stay. You've got as much right to be here as anyone." She turned back to the officers, her eyes steady. "If you want to take someone out of here, it's not going to be him." The diner was dead silent now, the air thick with tension. Daniels and Grant exchanged a look, their confidence faltering. The crowd was watching, phones starting to come out. A woman at a nearby table, Mrs. Carter, who'd known Sarah since she was a kid, spoke up. "She's right. Leave the man alone." Another voice from the back chimed in. "Yeah, what's he done?" The support grew, a low hum of agreement spreading through the room. Daniels took a step back, his face a mix of anger and uncertainty. He pointed at Sarah. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low. Then he jerked his head at Grant, and they turned, pushing through the door with a jingle that felt louder than it should. The diner erupted in chatter, some clapping, others whispering. Sarah let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding, her hands shaking slightly. She turned to the man who was watching her now, his expression unreadable. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded, a small gesture. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't have to do that." Sarah managed a smile, though her stomach was still in knots. "Yeah, I did," she said. "Nobody should be treated like that." As she walked back to the counter, she noticed a young guy in the corner, his phone still raised, recording. He gave her a thumbs up, his face lit with excitement. "That was awesome," he said. "This is going viral." Sarah frowned, not sure what he meant, but she didn't have time to think about it. The diner was buzzing, customers calling her over, asking if she was okay, telling her they'd never seen anything like that. Mike, her boss, gave her a look that was half proud, half worried. "You're going to catch hell for this, Sarah," he said quietly. She nodded, knowing he was right. The man in the booth finished his coffee, left a crumpled $10 bill on the table, and slipped out without another word. Sarah watched him go, wondering who he was, why the officers had targeted him. There was something about him, something heavy, like he carried a weight she couldn't see. As the door closed behind him, she felt a strange mix of relief and unease. She'd done the right thing, but at what cost? The rest of her shift passed in a blur, with customers retelling the story, some even slipping her extra tips. But as the day wound down and the diner emptied, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming. She wiped down the counter, her red waistcoat feeling heavier than usual, and glanced out the window at the quiet streets of Maple Ridge. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing. She'd stood up for what was right, and that was worth something. The bell above the door jingled as the last customer left the corner spot, leaving Sarah alone with the hum of the fridge and the faint smell of grease. She stood behind the counter, her white shirt untucked now, her red waistcoat draped over a stool. Her hands still trembled from the standoff with the officers, but she pushed the feeling down, wiping the counter in slow, steady circles. The young guy with the phone had left hours ago. His words about going viral stuck in her head. She didn't know much about the internet, but the way he'd grin made her uneasy. As she locked up, the neon sign outside flickered, casting a red glow over Maple Ridge's quiet main street. She pulled her jacket tight and headed home, unaware that her life was about to unravel. By morning, Sarah's phone was buzzing nonstop. She woke to a flood of notifications, texts, voicemails, even emails from people she didn't know. Her brother, Ethan, burst into the kitchen, his eyes wide. "Sarah, you're everywhere." He shoved his phone in her face, showing a shaky video of her standing up to Daniels and Grant. The clip cut off just as the officers stormed out, but her voice, clear and firm, rang through. "If you want to take someone out of here, it's not going to be him." Below the video, a hashtag was spreading like wildfire, #StandLikeSarah. Thousands of likes, shares, comments. People called her a hero, a voice for the little guy. Others, though, weren't so kind. "Troublemaker," one comment read. "She's going to regret this," said another. Sarah's stomach churned as she scrolled. She handed the phone back to Ethan, trying to laugh it off. "It's just noise," she said, but her voice shook. She got ready for work, pulling her hair into its usual claw clip, her waitress uniform feeling like armor she wasn't sure she could trust. At the corner spot, the mood was different. Customers stared as she poured coffee, some whispering, others asking for selfies. A few regulars, like old Mr. Thompson, squeezed her hand and said, "You did good, kid." But others avoided her eyes, their silence louder than words. Mike, her boss, pulled her aside during a lull. "Cops came by this morning," he said, his face grim. "Didn't say much, but they're watching. Be careful, Sarah." The next few days were a blur of tension. The video kept spreading, racking up millions of views. News vans parked outside the diner, reporters shoving microphones in her face as she walked to her car. "Sarah, what made you stand up to the police? Are you scared of retaliation?" She kept her answers short, her heart racing. "I just did what felt right," she'd say, then duck away. But Maple Ridge wasn't the safe haven it used to be. Eggs splattered her car one night, the yolk drying in ugly streaks. Threatening notes appeared under the diner's door, calling her a traitor, telling her to leave town. Ethan found her crying in the kitchen one evening, her hands shaking as she read a letter that said, "You'll pay for this." He hugged her tight, his voice fierce. "You're not alone, Sarah. We'll get through this." The backlash wasn't just from strangers. Some locals, people she'd known her whole life, turned cold. Mrs. Larson, who ran the bakery, stopped saying hello. The town's police chief, a friend of Daniels, made a statement on TV, calling the incident a misunderstanding and praising his officers. Sarah felt the weight of it all. Her mom's hospital bills piling up, Ethan's worried glances, the diner's business slowing as some folks stayed away. She wondered if she'd made a mistake, if standing up had cost her more than she could afford. But then, something strange happened. One morning, a delivery truck pulled up to the corner spot. A man in overalls unloaded crates of brand new kitchen gear, pots, pans, even a shiny coffee machine. "For Sarah Jennings," he said, handing her a note. No signature, just a typed message. "Keep standing tall." Sarah stared at the crates, confused. Mike scratched his head. "Who's got this kind of money?" he muttered. A few days later, another surprise. An envelope arrived at her house containing a new lease for the diner, paid in full for a year. No name, no explanation. Sarah's mom, weak but smiling from her hospital bed, squeezed her hand. "Someone out there believes in you," she said. The anonymous gifts kept coming. Groceries left on her porch, a stack of tires to replace the ones slashed on her car. Each one felt like a lifeline pulling her back from the edge. Online, #StandLikeSarah was growing into a movement. People shared their own stories of standing up to bullies, of fighting for what was right. A college kid started a fundraiser for Sarah's family, raising thousands to help with her mom's bills. Strangers sent letters calling her an inspiration. One note from a woman in Ohio stuck with her. "I was afraid to speak up once. You showed me I don't have to be." Still, the pressure didn't let up. Daniels and Grant were back in town, their patrol cars circling the diner like vultures. Sarah caught them staring through the window one afternoon, their faces hard. She forced herself to keep working, pouring coffee, smiling at customers, but her hands shook every time the door jingled. The mysterious man from the booth never came back, and Sarah couldn't stop wondering about him. Who was he? Why had the officers targeted him? His quiet thank you echoed in her mind, a reminder of why she'd spoken up. One evening, as she swept the diner's floor after closing, a shadow moved outside. Her heart jumped, thinking it was another threat, but it was just a kid, maybe 10, taping a drawing to the window. It showed a stick-figure waitress with a red vest standing tall with the words, "My hero," scrawled in crayon. Sarah's eyes stung as she watched the boy run off, his backpack bouncing. She peeled the drawing off the glass and tucked it into her pocket, her resolve hardening. Whatever came next, she wasn't backing down. As she locked up, her phone buzzed with a new notification. The video was trending again, shared by someone with a huge following. The caption read, "Maple Ridge's bravest. #stand like Sarah." She stared at the screen, the diner dark behind her, the town quiet except for the hum of crickets. The world was watching now, and she wasn't sure what that meant. All she knew was that the fight wasn't over, and someone, somewhere, was watching her back. The glow of Sarah's phone screen faded as she stood outside the corner spot, the night air cool against her face. The #stand like Sarah hashtag was everywhere now, a beacon for people across the country. But in Maple Ridge, it felt like a spotlight she couldn't escape. Threats still came, angry voicemails, graffiti on the diner's back wall, but so did the anonymous gifts. A new stove arrived one day, then a stack of aprons, each with a note for the fight. Sarah's heart raced with questions. Who was behind this? Why were they helping her? As she walked home, the kid's crayon drawing in her pocket, she felt a spark of hope, but also a growing sense that something big was coming. The next morning, the diner was busier than ever. Locals packed the booths, drawn by the viral story, and strangers drove in from out of town, wanting to meet the waitress who'd stood up to the cops. Sarah moved through the chaos in her white shirt and red waistcoat, her half-up hair in its claw clip, smiling despite the ache in her feet. A man sat at the counter, his face hidden under a familiar worn cap. It was him, the quiet man from the booth, the one who'd started it all. He looked up as she approached, his eyes steady but warm. "I owe you," he said, his voice low. "Name's Jordan Hale. I'd like to talk." Sarah's breath caught. She glanced at Mike, who nodded and led Jordan to a quiet corner booth. He spoke softly, his words measured. He was a billionaire, he said, a CEO who'd lost his wife years ago and moved to Maple Ridge to raise his son Timmy away from the spotlight. He'd been in the diner that day to keep a low profile, but Daniels and Grant had recognized him, sniffing for a payoff. "You didn't just save me," he said, leaning forward. "You reminded me what matters. I want to help you keep this place alive." Before Sarah could process his words, Jordan slid a folder across the table. Inside were papers offering her full ownership of the corner spot, plus funds to renovate it. "No strings," he said. "You've got a gift for bringing people together. Use it." Sarah's hands shook as she read the documents. It was too much, too sudden. "Why me?" she asked. Jordan smiled, a flicker of sadness in his eyes. "Because you stood up when no one else did. My son Timmy calls you his hero. That's enough for me." Sarah spent the next week in a daze. The offer weighing on her, she talked it over with her mom, who was home from the hospital now, her strength slowly returning. "Take it," her mom said, gripping her hand. "You've always taken care of us. Now take care of you." Sarah signed the papers, her heart pounding with fear and excitement. She renamed the diner Heart's Brew, a nod to the warmth she wanted it to hold. Renovation started fast, new tables, fresh paint, a sign out front that glowed soft gold. But not everyone was happy. A rival diner owner, Carl, spread rumors that Sarah was a fraud, even paying kids to smash Heart's Brew windows one night. Sarah swept up the glass, her jaw tight, refusing to let him win. As the diner took shape, Sarah made changes that felt right. She hired a homeless man, Tom, who lingered outside the old corner spot. He was shy but hardworking, and soon he was flipping pancakes like a pro, his grin lighting up the kitchen. Timmy, Jordan's son, started coming by after school, sketching designs for a mural on the diner's wall. His hero project, he called it, a painting of Sarah standing tall, surrounded by a crowd of supporters. Sarah blushed every time she saw it, but Timmy's pride made her chest ache with warmth. The town started to shift too. Locals who'd shunned her began showing up, drawn by the diner's new energy. Mrs. Carter, the woman who'd spoken up during the incident, organized a community potluck to celebrate Heart's Brew opening. Even some of the cops, embarrassed by Daniel's and Grant's actions, stopped by for coffee, their heads low, but their tips generous. Sarah's mom, now strong enough to help, baked pies for the menu, her laughter filling the diner for the first time in months. Ethan, her brother, took charge of the diner's social media, posting photos of the mural and Tom's pancakes, keeping #StandLikeSarah alive. But Carl's sabotage didn't stop. He bribed a health inspector to nitpick Heart's Brew, threatening to shut it down over minor violations. Sarah stayed up late, scrubbing every corner, her hands raw, but her resolve unbreakable. When the inspector returned, he found nothing to fault, his face sour as he left. Word got out and Carl's diner lost customers, his lies crumbling under the town's growing loyalty to Sarah. By opening day, Heart's Brew was packed, the lines stretching down the block. Timmy's mural glowed on the wall, and Sarah's mom cut the ribbon, her eyes shining with pride. As weeks passed, Heart's Brew became Maple Ridge's heart. Families came for Sunday brunch. Teens studied in the booths and Tom trained new hires, his confidence growing. Jordan stopped by now and then, always quiet, always watching with a small smile. One evening, he brought Timmy, who ran to Sarah with a drawing of the diner labeled "Home." Sarah hugged him, her throat tight. "You did this," Jordan said softly. "You turned this town around." Months later, a local news station ran a story on Heart's Brew, calling it Maple Ridge's miracle. They interviewed Sarah, who stood in her red waistcoat, her voice steady. "I just wanted to do what's right," she said. "Kindness changes things. It's not always easy, but it's worth it." The story spread and #StandLikeSarah trended again, this time with photos of the diner, Tom's smile, Timmy's mural. Letters poured in from across the country, people inspired to stand up in their own towns, to fight for fairness, to build something good. Sarah stood behind the counter one quiet evening, wiping it down as the jukebox played a soft tune. The diner was hers now, not just a place to work, but a symbol of what courage could do. She thought of the threats, the broken glass, the nights she doubted herself. Then she looked at her mom laughing with customers, at Tom joking with Ethan, at Timmy's mural shining on the wall. Maple Ridge was different now, kinder, stronger. And so was she. As Sarah locked up Heart's Brew, the diner's warm glow spilled onto the quiet streets of Maple Ridge. She'd stood up for a stranger, faced a storm of hate, and built something beautiful from the ashes. Her courage showed that one small act of justice can spark a wave of change, turning fear into hope and division into community. The lesson is clear. Standing up for what's right, even when it's hard, doesn't just change the moment. It can transform lives, inspire others, and rebuild a town. So, what's the one brave step you'll take today to make a difference? If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with a friend who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more heart-pounding tales with twists that stay with you long after the screen fades. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We read every single one.